Hello and welcome to Valuechain News. I am Naomi Oleribe. First, the headlines. Federal government unveils plans to boost power grid by 3,863 megawatts. OPEC forecasts rise in global demand in 2023. Nigeria's crude oil production averaged 1.238 million barrels per day in June. And now, the news in detail. The federal government has concluded plans to boost electricity supply by an additional 3,863 megawatts across the country in the next 24 months. The government disclosed this through its Nigerian Electricity Regulatory Commission in a June 2022 document on the current state of the Nigerian electricity supply industry made available to newsmen in Abuja. Nigeria's peak power generation as of Monday, July 11th, 2022 was 4,022.2 megawatts, while off-peak generation on the same day was put at 3,521.3 megawatts. Power generation on the national grid as at 6 a.m. on Tuesday, July 12th, 2022 was 3,941.1 megawatts. On the quantum of electricity to be added in the next 2 years, the industry regulator said NERC has identified remedial plan with TCN and DISCOs on addressing key interface challenges on short, medium and long terms. The Nigerian Electricity Regulatory Commission (NEC) stated that the Nigerian electricity supply industry (NESI) was still confronted by poor service delivery and the absence of meters for a substantial number of residential customers, adding that the allowed end-user tariff was still not cost-reflective. OPEC expects global oil demand to rise in 2023, but at a slower pace than 2022, the producer group said in its first forecast for next year, citing robust economic growth and progress in containing COVID-19 in China. In a monthly report on Tuesday, OPEC said it expects demand to rise by 2.7 million barrels per day, or 2.7% in 2023. It left this year's growth forecast unchanged at 3.36 million barrels per day. Oil use has rebounded from the pandemic-induced slump in 2020 and is set to exceed 2019 levels this year. The outlook for 2023 suggests a strain on supplies could persist as growth in non-OPEC output, which has been hit by Russian losses. In 2023, expectations for healthy global economic growth amidst improvements and geopolitical developments, combined with expected improvements in the containment of COVID-19 in China, are expected to boost consumption of oil, OPEC said in the report. The Organization of Petroleum Exporting Countries, OPEC, says Nigeria's crude oil production increased to an average of 1.238 million barrels per day in June 2022. OPEC made this known in its oil market report for July 2022. The report said the figure showed an increase of 5,000 barrels per day when compared to the 1.233 million barrels per day produced averagely in the month of May 2022. The report said despite improvements in fossil fuel prices, the short-term economic outlook for Nigeria was clouded by high inflation, which had reduced private sector optimism and weakened consumer spending. It said in May 2022, the composite consumer price index rose to 17.7% year-on-year from 16.8% year-on-year in the previous month. In response to the elevated inflationary pressures, the Central Bank of Nigeria raised its policy rate by 150 basic points to 13%, bringing borrowing costs to the highest since April of 2020. It was the biggest rate hike since July of 2016, amid concerns that persistent inflationary pressures could weigh on the country's fragile recovery, the report stated. Libya's state-owned National Oil Corporation (NOC) has lifted force majeure on the eastern oil terminals of Zuweitina and Brega after nearly a 2-week closure to allow a tanker to carry condensate for use in power generation in the OPEC member whose oil supply has exacerbated a tight crude market. The lifting of force majeure follows intense negotiation to allow the tanker to enter the terminals and ship condensate, a step that will be followed by other steps, NOC Chairman Mustafa Sanala said in a statement earlier today. Libya, whose supply disruptions have escalated in past weeks due to blockades and shutdowns at its key oil infrastructure, pumped 650,000 barrels per day in June, its lowest since October 2020, according to the latest Platts survey by S&P Global Commodity Insights. Libya's crude production has remained well below its current capacity of 1.2 million barrels per day in recent months due to protests and blockades at its energy infrastructure amid a deepening political crisis. The global price of oil could surge by 40% to around $140 per barrel if a proposed price cap on Russian oil is not adopted, along with sanction exemptions that will allow shipments below that price, a senior U.S. Treasury officer said on Tuesday. U.S. Treasury Secretary Janet Yellen discussed the implementation of the U.S. price cap proposal and global economic development with Japanese Finance Minister yesterday, the official said. The goal was to set the price at a level that covered Russia's marginal cost of production, so Moscow is incentivized to continue exporting oil, but not high enough to allow it to fund its war against Ukraine, the official said. Japanese official had expressed concern about the price cap being set too low, but had not rejected a potential price range of $40 to $60 per barrel outright, the official added. Nigeria attracted a sum of $223.3 million as foreign direct investments (FDI) in the first 5 months of 2022, representing a 3.7% increase compared to $215.3 million recorded in the corresponding period of the previous year. In contrast to the comparable period of 2020, FDI declined by 7.5% compared to $241.5 million received in the reference period. This is according to data compiled from the Central Bank of Nigeria, CBN. Nigeria's foreign direct investment has dwindled significantly recently, hitting a record low of $698.8 million in 2021, most of which was equity. However, most developing economies desire more direct investments, considering the benefits it has on the host countries. According to the International Monetary Fund (IMF), foreign direct investment is a form of inflow in which investors bring in their investments in an enterprise in another economy with the objective of gaining control or exerting significant influence over the management of the firm. Before we end the news, here's a recap of our headlines. Federal government unveils plans to boost power grid by 3,863 megawatts. OPEC forecasts rise in global demand in 2023. Nigeria's crude oil production averaged 1.238 million barrels per day in June. And that's the news. I am Naomi Oleribe. Good evening.